I'm Batman.
So I finally reviewed every single classic Batman movie. Batman 89, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin have all gotten their full-length reviews throughout last year. With those reviews finally being done, it was only right to do the proper follow-up mega video on this channel, reviewing the entirety of Nolan's Batman trilogy in one video for your viewing pleasure. Trust me, I know it's what the people wanted because every single one of you has shown up for all of my previous Batman related videos, so I'm not gonna keep you waiting any longer. It's time we review Nolan's Batman trilogy. Let's dive into Batman Begins. Batman Begins is okay, I guess. I like Batman Begins, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that it took a very long time for me to like this movie while watching it. When this movie reaches the middle section and onward, it gets so damn good. There are a lot of great action scenes, despite the weird editing in those action scenes, and the movie finally begins to feel like a Batman movie. Whether it's the music, the atmosphere, Crane's descent into becoming Scarecrow, Gotham's transformation into becoming this twisted, dark, and gritty city, or Bruce's growth into being the Batman, this is where the movie finds its stride. This is where the movie is genuinely at its best. On the other hand, to see those great parts of Batman Begins, you need to overcome what I deem the weakest portion of the movie, its introduction. It's not good. In fact, it's almost frustrating to watch the beginning of Batman Begins because it's so odd. I don't like this movie's iteration of Ra's al Ghul, especially because we now have better live action interpretations of the character. I don't like the use of the League of Shadows. I don't like the pacing at the beginning of the movie either. I personally don't like the overly forced spiritual emphasis on bats, which leads to random cuts to visuals of bats and an obnoxious sound cue of more bats. Yes, I'm talking about the animal, not the nickname that Harley Quinn gives Batman and other pieces of Batman media. I'm fully aware that last one is a nitpick, by the way, but come on, can you blame me? We don't need a Batman movie to randomly cut to a ton of bats to emphasize Bruce's destiny of becoming Batman. I think it's pointless and obnoxious, that's all. Conceptually, a lot of the things that the first act of Batman Begins is attempting to achieve makes sense. Starting the movie off with a weakened Bruce Wayne who has internal struggles and needs some sort of guidance and training makes sense. You can't start a trilogy off with an already well-established and experienced character. There needs to be room for growth. There needs to be a motive for our characters to grow and become the character we expect them to become by the end of the movie and by the end of a trilogy, if applicable. In this case of Batman Begins, we have a struggling Bruce Wayne who's seeking guidance so he can become the Bruce Wayne we know and love, and eventually become Batman as well. However, I feel like this movie could have committed to the same concept using a different introduction, or at least using a much better supporting character to pivot Bruce Wayne's trajectory and growth for this movie. Sure, Batman Begins tries to do a major plot twist, which is revealing that Liam Neeson was Ra's al Ghul the entire time, not the person they wanted us to believe was Ra's al Ghul at the beginning of the movie. This doesn't work for me. Don't get me wrong, I know it should because it's supposed to make you have that reaction of, oh shit, Bruce was learning from Ra's al Ghul the entire time, not a random messenger. It just doesn't work for me because I found its use of Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows to be not only lackluster, but straight up boring as well. It doesn't help that I also kind of wish it was someone else playing Ra's al Ghul because I I don't think Liam Neeson was particularly good in this role either. While I have all of these complaints, I've yet to mention that Roz kind of disappears after 30 to 40 minutes into this nearly 3-hour long movie. You sort of forget about him and his plotline as a whole. It just goes out of the window because the movie pivots its focus to Bruce becoming Batman, introducing the actual main plot of the movie, which is Scarecrow's motives, and introducing key characters that'll play a part in the rest of this trilogy, such as Lucius Fox. Part of me just feels like the entire first act has a good idea or concept that simply needed better execution. And even though I dislike these things, I can't necessarily knock them because, admittedly, Batman Begins brings these things together. Even though you forget Ra's al Ghul after the beginning of this movie brings him back towards the end to not leave that storyline incomplete. Even though this movie attempts to sell us on the idea that Falcone and Scarecrow are the actual antagonists of Batman Begins, this movie throws us the plot twist of Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul working together. Just to also throw it out there, I thought that was a bit weak. I would have loved to see a scene that proved this connection or ongoing team up between Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul. Giving us a throwaway line is kind of understandable and somewhat acceptable, but I would have liked a visual scene proving this to make it a lot more buyable, even if it was a flashback scene. Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Batman Arkham City's ending, where Ra's al Ghul kind of just appears at the end of the game and throws that plot twist of him working together with Hugo Strange, and you're like, wait, what? Once again, I know I'm being nitpicky here and I'm pointing out things that actually end up working out in the long run for Batman Begins, but that's sort of my job, you know? It's just that, in my opinion, the beginning of the movie feels so damn different than the rest of Batman Begins. It feels so different that it almost feels like that section took place in an entirely different movie. Now that I've spent way too much time nitpicking Batman Begins, I guess I should talk about the things I like about Batman Begins. Firstly, Christian Bale kind of kills it as Bruce Wayne towards the latter half of this movie, as Bruce grows and learns how to deal with his internal struggles and his family business again. You can see his growth into becoming the Bruce Wayne. You know, the man who knows how to talk to people to get his way, the man who knows how to easily charm women, and the man who balances his two separate lives. You can tell that Christian Bale understood what it means to be Bruce Wayne, or at least what's expected out of a new modern iteration of Bruce Wayne. And it was hard to not appreciate that growth, considering Batman Begins does a good enough job at separating past Bruce from current Bruce. If you don't remember, they use an awful haircut to show past Bruce. It's almost so bad that it's good, but you get the point. It's just that by the time the ending of Batman Begins arrives and Batman has this final conversation with James Gordon, you can't help but smile. You feel that he's earned his growth, and you can tell that he's conquered his internal struggles and learned how to use his double life to his strength. It's a genuinely well done arc, even if the entry point is weak. Look, I'm sorry, I don't like the first act of Batman Begins, alright? Secondly, and I feel the need to say this because I've spoken about this in my other Batman review videos, the transformation of Gotham is okay, I guess. Don't get me wrong, set design wise, I don't love Nolan's take on Gotham in comparison to Tim Burton's over-the-top set design for his Batman movies. However, watching Gotham go from this generic looking city that has you questioning whether it's actually Gotham or not, to becoming this run-down, violent, gritty, and this nearly demolished city was somewhat worth the wait. As I was watching Batman Begins, I won't lie, it bugged me. I didn't feel like I was watching a Batman movie because I recently went through the entirety of classic Batman movies, which have a much more creative visual tone. Batman Begins, however, makes you wait and slowly builds towards making Gotham, Gotham. The city begins to get destroyed as Scarecrow begins to become the primary antagonist and as Bruce Wayne begins to do Batman-related things, giving it that Gotham feel. As that happens over time, the color palette also changes from these generic blue and silverish color tones to consisting of gray, red, black, brown, dark blue, and a hint of green, and it works. As Gotham falls, the atmosphere and the music of this newly destroyed and corrupted Gotham rises. The depth and world building of Gotham gets so much better and becomes the Gotham you want in a Batman story. Thirdly, I have to give props to this iteration of Scarecrow. I love how Jonathan Crane descends into his madness and turns on Falcone. It's almost like this switch in his head turns on and you want him to not talk to anybody because you know he's gone mad. And it showed when he started talking to Rachel Dawes, and I'm sitting here thinking, Rachel, no, get the hell away from him, because you can't help but see his change in mannerisms as he becomes a villain. In fact, he kind of makes you uncomfortable, and that's a good thing because that's what he's intended to do. It's such a well done take on Scarecrow, and for once you feel like Batman doesn't have his shit together, which is usually the case. You never really watch a Batman movie or a Batman show and think, oh man, Batman is screwed, he's so fucked. In Batman Begins, that train of thought can be built because this movie does such a good job at building Scarecrow as a threat to an inexperienced Batman. A perfect example of this is when Batman confronts Scarecrow for the first time and Batman is pretty much losing his shit as he tries to get away from Scarecrow after the drug is used on him. It's hard not to think at that moment, oh yeah, Batman's never dealt with something like this before. His reaction actually makes sense and he could be screwed if he doesn't figure it out soon. Small details that build up things like Gotham's presence, Batman's inexperience, and Scarecrow's power as an antagonist allow a moment like that to really stand out. It's truly a well done iteration of such an interesting character. By the way, I don't hate Scarecrow's mask or the visual effects that happen when he uses his drug against people. For a movie that came out in 2005, it still shockingly holds up well. As for the chemistry between Bruce and supporting characters such as Lucius, Alfred, or Rachel, it takes a while to buy into those connections or friendships. Just like the rest of the movie, the chemistry between Bruce and other characters takes a while to build up, but when it finally hits that point, it hits. A character like Lucius Fox has highlight moments such as when Lucius is talking to Bruce and he's like, as far as I'm concerned, all of this stuff is yours, Bruce, because he doesn't like the new shareholder of Wayne Enterprises is hilarious. The fact that he entertains Bruce's spelunking, as he calls it, without really asking questions is hilarious. Morgan Freeman makes you like Lucius Fox so damn much, and he doesn't even play that big of a role in Batman Begins. And while he's sort of the comedic relief in this movie, you have Michael Caine's take on Alfred, which is far more balanced and has far more depth than he probably should. He has serious scenes, he has funny one-liners like mentioning trying to figure out how to bring Bruce back from the dead, and there are even pivotal emotional scenes that are so well done. Unlike the forgettable iterations of Alfred in the classic Batman movies, you actually grow to really like Alfred in Batman Begins. You almost want to hug him when he tells Bruce towards the end of the movie that he's never given up on him after Ra's al Ghul blows up Wayne Manor. I know we don't get a lot of scenes with these characters together as one full unit in Batman Begins, but the interactions Bruce shares with these characters separately throughout this movie is genuinely well done. Look, I do like Batman Begins, even if I might not sound like it. I think as a whole, it does a good job at being the beginning point of such a well-known trilogy. Is it perfect? No, it has its problems, and I certainly don't like its first act or use of the Ra's al Ghul and League of Shadows storyline. It also takes a bit to build towards the actual vision one has of Batman and his universe, which is a well-done iteration of Bruce Wayne, a well-done job at building up Batman villains, and a visually well-done Gotham. However, my problems with this movie aren't gonna make me hate Batman Begins. Sure, I'm really hard on the first act for having a lot of questionable choices, being straight up boring, and having an idea that I think could be better, but that's because of how much better the second half of Batman Begins is. Also, this should go without saying, but the Tumblr in this movie was fucking sick. I just had to mention it and get it out of my system because, man, it was easily my #1 highlight of this movie, and it's what comes to mind when I think of Batman Begins. If you've never watched my videos, I don't really do numerical scores, but I'm gonna rank them towards the end of this video, so let's just move on to the best movie in this trilogy, The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is a 10 out of 10 movie. It is a masterpiece. It will always be referred to as an all-time classic. It will always have arguably the best iteration of any comic book villain brought to life. It is most definitely one of the best superhero movies ever made as well. Alright, now that this section of the video is done, I guess we can move on to The Dark Knight Rises. Wait, you guys are expecting me to spend even more time talking about The Dark Knight? Really? I mean, there's not much to be said that hasn't already been said, but alright, fine. Just like most DC fans or superhero nerds in general, I absolutely adore The Dark Knight. It's a movie that I've seen what feels like 100 times now, and I still have yet to get sick of this movie. That's how much I love The Dark Knight. And admittedly, for those of you that don't know this, it's one of my favorite movies ever made. However, in my Batman 89 video, I teased that I would discuss why I don't think that The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. And before I discuss this, there's something that needs to be said. Yes, this is going to be a nitpick. No, this isn't meant to take away from the greatness that is The Dark Knight by any means. No, this isn't me trying to look for a flaw in such an outstanding movie. Honestly, I wouldn't bring this nitpick up if I felt that it wouldn't generate a genuine and healthy discussion in the comments below. The Dark Knight isn't a movie about Batman, it's a movie about the Joker, and that's why it's not the best Batman movie. Let me explain. The entire premise or story of The Dark Knight is Joker consistently pushing the boundary of destruction due to his madness and obsession with Batman. Where you think he won't cross a specific line, he does. The Dark Knight starts with him robbing banks and ends with him putting the lives of other people into the hands of two separate boats, hoping one boat filled with people would kill the other. There's a steady increase in his madness, and it doesn't go away because of what he's trying to achieve in this movie. Joker's entire goal is to not only take down Batman, but to prove that quite literally any man, even if they're a good one like Harvey Dent, can fall into the hands of madness. While Joker is doing all of these things, the movie is constantly showing us the counter perspective of Bruce Wayne along with the other good people like Commissioner Gordon reacting to and trying to counter Joker's chaotic actions. It also doesn't help that almost everybody who likes The Dark Knight loves Heath Ledger's iconic Joker. Like, we all know he's in the wrong regarding his actions. We all know he's a morally awful character and that he's actively ruining millions of people's lives because everything is a game to him. At the same time though, most of us can put that aside because Joker's one hell of an entertaining character. Sure, he's crazy, chaotic, erratic, absolutely insane, and a killer, but he's fun to watch. In fact, despite him being all of those awful things, it's actually hard to not like him because he's that entertaining. And I've said this in my video discussing the success of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie. Joker is the main character of The Dark Knight, and by him being the main character, he essentially stunts Bruce Wayne's growth in this movie. Once again, I'll explain. Throughout the majority of The Dark Knight, Bruce is suffering due to tragedy in this movie. Yes, he gets a new batsuit and his gadgets, which he didn't have in Batman Begins. However, Bruce loses way more than he gains in this movie. Joker essentially ruins Bruce's life by continuously hunting for Batman. Rachel dies, Harvey falls to the hands of Gotham's darkness, becomes Two-Face, and also dies. For a while, Commissioner Gordon is also believed to be dead. The people of Gotham also begin to hate Batman's existence since he is what causes Joker to terrorize Gotham. Bruce's moral compass is also pushed to its limits in this movie, so much so that Bruce takes a concept that Lucius showed him and turns it into a gigantic spying machine because he's so desperate to take down the Joker by any means possible. As Batman began in Batman Begins, Batman basically falls in The Dark Knight. Honestly, this train of thought is emphasized by Commissioner Gordon's amazing speech at the very end of this movie, where he discusses why Batman still needs to be hunted by the Gotham PD despite finally capturing the Joker. Sure, Batman did finally save the day, but at what cost? Okay, yeah, I know we find out the cost in The Dark Knight Rises, but I thought that'd be a cool sentence to end this paragraph on, alright? With all that being said, I still very much love The Dark Knight. It's not like I lost any of the love that I have for this movie. If anything, I found love in this movie even more than I previously did. In my eyes, The Dark Knight is still one of the best superhero movies ever made. During my most recent rewatch of this movie, I think the number one thing that stands out is the outstanding soundtrack. I don't understand how Hans Zimmer managed to achieve this, but the soundtrack in this movie does such a fantastic job at displaying or emphasizing emotions throughout the entirety of The Dark Knight. Whether it's the scene where Joker crashes the party and the camera rotates around him and Rachel as he interrogates her, the scene where the cop is getting a funeral and the anxiety in Gotham is high, or the moment where Batman has to choose between saving Rachel or saving Harvey, the soundtrack carries these moments. It feels like it does such heavy lifting for key moments of this movie, but in a good way, because even without it, those scenes are still well done. It's just that Hans Zimmer's soundtrack adds this extra layer of depth, and as you're watching this movie, you can't help but be like, holy fuck, this soundtrack is amazing. Now, typically, I don't mention camera work in my video reviews. However, that's about to change because there's a specific scene in The Dark Knight that I love: Joker crashing the party. For reference, throughout The Dark Knight, the movie does this whole rotating camera thing in multiple scenes where the camera rotates around characters. To give an example, there's a scene where Bruce and Alfred are in the Batcave and they're discussing a plan. As that happens, the camera is literally rotating in a circle around them. Now, I won't lie, in that scene, the rotating camera thing didn't work for me, but it does in the scene where Joker crashes Harvey Dent's party. Why? It's because in that scene, Joker confronts Rachel, and that scene made me uncomfortable as it was designed. It stood out to me because there are a lot of layers to that scene. You have Hans Zimmer's soundtrack adding a tension-building score to keep us on our toes. You have Joker getting closer and closer to Rachel as he holds a knife to her face. You have Rachel pushing away, trying to look at anything but Joker because she wants to get away from him. Then you have the camera work. As the camera rotates and circles Joker and Rachel, it almost feels like it gets closer to these characters. The camera rotating with the combination of the other things that I previously mentioned adds to the claustrophobia that Rachel is feeling. It stresses you out. It makes you hope that Rachel gets away. It makes you want to push Joker away from her, and together it genuinely works. It's arguably my favorite scene in this movie. Not that that's probably an unpopular opinion because of these elements that come together, and honestly, out of all of the movies I've reviewed on this channel, this is the first scene that's ever really made me appreciate camera work in a superhero movie. That's not to say that there aren't other moments in The Dark Knight to love. You have moments like Lucius being confronted by that one worker in Wayne Enterprises who boldly claims that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he tries to blackmail Lucius only for Lucius to mock him, which was fucking hilarious, might I add. You have the very long underground action scene where Joker's trying to blow up the car that Harvey's in, and Batman comes in with the tumbler to defend Harvey and fight Joker off. You have the scene where Joker is standing outside of Gotham General Hospital and he's spam pressing the button to fully blow up the hospital, which shouldn't be funny, but it is because of how the Joker reacts to the lack of explosions. You have Batman using sonar vision to finally get the final confrontation between him and Joker, which reminds me a lot of the Batman Arkham games, by the way. As a whole, The Dark Knight has so much to like and so much to gush over because it basically is a masterpiece of a movie. Before I end this section, I just want to give credit where it's due. Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face is so good and so tragic at the same time, which, of course, is by design. After sitting through Tommy Lee Jones' frustrating and pathetic Two-Face iteration, it's hard to not love it. The fact that we see this man who Bruce is amping up to be the actual hero that Gotham needs fall into the hands of the Joker is so sad. It's tragic, especially because we see how much he loves saving Gotham. We see how much he wants to make Gotham a better place. Then Joker pushes his limit and emotionally breaks Harvey, even though Harvey's inner anger problems briefly showcased themselves throughout The Dark Knight. Why does the Joker do this? Just to prove a point, to prove that no matter how good of a person someone can be, anyone can become evil, and Harvey does. Harvey's downfall literally happens because everything, literally everything, is a game to Joker, and it is so heartbreaking to watch over the course of this movie. That sense of tragedy and sadness hits, especially when Harvey almost kills Gordon's kid, even though Gordon simply wanted to save Harvey, someone who he considered an actual friend. It's so sad, but it was so refreshing to see that storyline come to fruition. It's a small detail, but I also loved how Harvey rapidly began to amp up the use of his coin to the point where he uses it multiple times till he gets the outcome he wants in specific situations. Even the small details like that stand out in The Dark Knight. Look, I know there isn't a lot more to say about this character, but I just wanted to give the credit where it's due because I know it can easily be glossed over. After all, so many other great things can overshadow this iteration of Harvey Dent and Two-Face. As a whole, I love this movie. The Dark Knight truly is greatness. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the best superhero movies ever made. It still holds up up perfectly, and it's a 10 out of 10 movie. This is a movie that you can watch time and time again, and it will likely never get old. On top of that, it has the most iconic iteration of the Joker ever made, and that will likely never be topped. With that being said, it's time we dive into the final movie of this trilogy before I rank this overall trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises.
This is the instrument of your liberation.
The Dark Knight Rises is a mess. I think the core problem with The Dark Knight Rises is the fact that it's trying to balance so much within its 3-hour runtime. And most of it falls flat, or at least isn't as strong as it could be. For instance, this movie tries to balance introducing Selina Kyle and her storyline, introducing John Blake and his storyline, introducing Bane and his overall plan, and introducing Miranda's storyline for the eventual long-term plot twist as well. Take those things and combine it with Bruce Wayne going through another round of suffering, which makes it feel less important than he should in this movie, the lack of Commissioner Gordon, Alfred, and Lucius Fox, who were all stellar supporting characters in The Dark Knight, and this movie ends up feeling like it's far too ambitious. It's not that I think The Dark Knight Rises is an awful movie or a bad movie in general. I just feel like this movie would have been better if it was far more focused like the previous two movies in this trilogy. Honestly, I think that's the biggest negative when it comes to The Dark Knight Rises: lack of focus. Now, in my opinion, The Dark Knight Rises strives the most when Bane is on the screen, and oddly enough, I think that's my biggest takeaway from rewatching this movie. Tom Hardy's Bane is so much better than I remember that I may have an actual unpopular opinion. I think Bane was a much better villain against Batman than Joker was in The Dark Knight. I know what you're thinking, I'm insane, but hear me out. As a villain, Bane has multiple key moments in this movie that had me thinking, oh shit, he continuously reinforces that he has a plan, and it constantly keeps you on your feet as the movie progresses to the point where it has you thinking, what the hell is this madman's plan? From seeing Bane destroy Batman in their first confrontation to seeing the key moment for Bane in this movie, the football stadium scene, this iteration of Bane is a genuinely threatening and scary villain. Not once does Bane ever feel like he's going to eventually be caught. Not once does Bane come off as an antagonist that can be stopped, not by Catwoman, not by the GCPD, and most definitely not by Batman during the early portions of this movie. I say this despite knowing that Batman is going to save Gotham by defeating Bane at the end of this movie. Just like Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, Tom Hardy is the reason to watch The Dark Knight Rises. There isn't a single scene with Tom Hardy in it that comes off as uninteresting, comes off as weak, or makes me think, that could have been better, or that line wasn't delivered as well as it could be. Funny enough, every time this movie would cut away from Tom Hardy being what feels like an essentially unstoppable villain, I would kind of get bummed out. That's how much I like Tom Hardy's Bane. In comparison to Joker, I just feel like Bane did such a better job at pushing Bruce Wayne to his absolute limit. He breaks Bruce mentally, emotionally, and physically to the point where Bruce has to climb out of a pit that rarely anybody escapes. When that moment happens where Bruce overcomes the odds after learning about Bane's pit, it hits. It's a beautiful moment, and it gives you that sense of excitement to the point where you're thinking, shit's about to go down. The impact of Bane is felt from the very beginning of the movie, just like Joker's presence was felt throughout The Dark Knight, except Bane makes Joker's chaos look like a joke, pun intended. You know what? I absolutely love it. As for something I don't love, yeah, it's time we talk about the problem I have with this iteration of Selina Kyle. A key character like Selina Kyle, who's one of the more pivotal characters in Batman's mythos, shouldn't stand out as a lackluster character in this movie. No, I don't like Anne Hathaway's iteration of Catwoman, and it's not because of how she's written or her overall storyline in this movie. It's because of Anne Hathaway's acting. It just feels like she fails to bring that sense of flirtation that comes with being Catwoman, as seen in multiple other pieces of Batman media, such as Batman Arkham City, which was released 1 year before The Dark Knight Rises, for example. This movie tries to sell you on the idea that she has this deep yet complicated chemistry with Batman, but she doesn't. In fact, she actually has very little chemistry with Batman, to the point where the kiss at the end of the movie isn't earned. I know, it's supposed to come off as this justified moment where the two complicated characters who sort of understand each other because they're both vigilantes and because Selina finally changes her moral compass after going through all of this with Bruce, thus leading to them kissing each other. However, it doesn't come off like that at all. It comes off as a forced moment that makes you kind of think about the time being wasted by this kiss, considering there are like 10 minutes left until the bomb is about to go off when she kisses Batman. Typically, Catwoman continuously steals a show in any piece of Batman media, whether it's Batman Arkham City, Batman the Telltale series, or Gotham the show, and in comparison to those examples or iterations of Catwoman, this Selina Kyle isn't that good and leaves a lot to be desired. Speaking of lackluster characters, there is a character whose significance in The Dark Knight Rises feels far less important in the grand scheme of things: Joseph Gordon-Levitt's John Blake. At least that's what the movie wants you to think his name is, until the plot twist is thrown at the end where it's revealed that his actual name is Robin. I don't hate Blake at all. In fact, he reminds me of a younger or modern version of Gotham's The Show, Jim Gordon, so I actually kind of like him. It's just that having a modern perspective and knowing that his storyline isn't continued post The Dark Knight Rises almost makes me wish his character wasn't in this movie at all. Think about it. His character is introduced to Sideline Commissioner Gordon, a character who we spent just about 5 hours with, give or take, and essentially gets his character growth stunted for the sake of a halted storyline. Truthfully, almost everything Blake does or goes through, Gordon could have done himself rather than pretty much getting thrown into the hospital for about 60% of this movie. Gordon still could have had his major lie about Harvey Dent's death revealed by Bane. Gordon could have still found his way to get the nuclear bomb to help Batman and Catwoman towards the end of the movie, and the happy ending could have still existed. Outside of that, I don't really have a problem with this character at all. Is it great that he's this resilient person who learned how to be a hero from watching Batman as a kid? Absolutely. Is it cool that he takes it upon himself to try to give little kids hope rather than letting them feel fear even when all hope is seemingly lost during the bus scene? Yup. Do I love that his storyline ends up with him rising to become the next Batman as Bruce sunsets his life as Batman? Hell yes. It's just that since this character wasn't ever continued, you could almost remove him entirely from the movie and most things would go down the exact same way in an alternate movie. Still, I want to emphasize that I do like Robin and think that Joseph Gordon-Levitt does a more than good enough job playing him. Okay, fine, I'll talk about the damn Talia al Ghul plot twist already. Look, I don't despise it conceptually. I think it's a decent idea. Why? Because personally, I like the train of thought of, let's try to close this trilogy out by introducing a final storyline that gives this trilogy a full circle moment. However, I never bought Bruce sleeping with Miranda because Bruce was literally emphasizing how much he misses and loves Rachel throughout the early portions of this movie. That only happened so she could come off as this villain with some master plan, but it never fit because that reveal was far too late into the movie. However, that plan, which led to the eventual plot twist, was also ruined and capped off by the most egregious death scene I've probably ever seen in a modern superhero movie. To me, that ruins what should be a pivotal reveal in this movie, but her reveal feels like nothing more than a throwaway line. Sure, Talia is telling us that she's been working with Bane this entire time. Sure, Talia's saying she's doing it to avenge Raz's death falls in line with what you'd expect out of a comic book villain. However, it just doesn't work because I don't find it believable at all. This movie wants us to buy this whole Bane loved Talia, so he suffered for her, which then created this bond leading to them working together to do Ra's al Ghul's plan, which includes killing Batman and destroying Gotham storyline. But how can we buy it if we've never been shown their dynamic in modern times? Why would you not show us, the viewers, Talia and Bane planning methodically together and working on this gigantic plan to avenge Raz's death? That would have added a lot more impact to this reveal. Think about it. If we were shown that Miranda was actually Talia around the middle point of the movie, but the other characters didn't know yet, her presence would have caused even more tension throughout this movie. We would have been far more concerned with what she may or may not do to various characters like Lucius when she's talking to him about the nuclear bomb. It would have given her depth, but instead it's just like, oh, by the way, I'm Talia and you killed my father who excommunicated the only person to protect me in my childhood, and I never really liked my dad, but then you killed him, so now I had to do all of this to prove my worth to my dead father. Am I the only person who thinks that this reveal sounds absolutely absurd without any real buildup? There was potential there, and it could have been a much bigger deal in the grand scheme of things, but since it failed to be executed in a well-done fashion, this Talia al Ghul plot twist leaves a lot to be desired, just like this movie's Selina Kyle. The Dark Knight Rises is an enjoyable experience, but it's a bloated experience. Along the lines, there's a genuinely outstanding movie if it was cut down in length. Tom Hardy's performance as Bane is the specific standout character and performance in this movie by far. In fact, I'd argue that he's the reason to actually sit down and rewatch The Dark Knight Rises. His performance is that good in this movie. However, it's the things outside of Tom Hardy's Bane that brings this movie's quality down as a whole. It's genuinely a shame because if I'm being real, this movie had the potential to be something special as a whole rather than having one special performance carrying The Dark Knight Rises on its back. That's just about it. I guess it's time I'd rank this trilogy as a whole and give some final thoughts before I end the video. Without any real explanation needed, The Dark Knight is the best movie of this trilogy, and it is the movie of this trilogy. That's clearly not a shocking opinion, and it's pretty much the general consensus. Where I struggle to rank these movies is figuring out which movie I prefer, Batman Begins or The Dark Knight Rises. Batman Begins is a far more focused movie and has elements or ideas that I specifically like as the movie progresses. However, that first hour is incredibly rough and I do not like it at all. While The Dark Knight Rises is far from focused, it has this incredible standout performance that I specifically love now, with an ending that sort of falls flat since there was no continuation of that storyline after this movie. Plus, there are things in this movie that feel like extra fat, along with removing screen time from characters I like, such as Alfred or Lucius. You know what? Screw it. Yeah, The Dark Knight is at number 1, The Dark Knight Rises is number 2, and finally, Batman Begins is at number 3. That's my ranking of this trilogy. As as for my general thoughts about Nolan's trilogy, it was rough rewatching this with a modern lens. I remember having so much love for this trilogy and thinking this trilogy was essentially perfect, but it's not. There are a lot of things that I disliked, as I voiced throughout this video. There are a lot of things that were good ideas but could have been better. The hard truth that I've learned is that The Dark Knight is what carried my nostalgia for this trilogy. Don't get me wrong, I found a whole lot of love for Tom Hardy's Bane now, but it's not enough to have a massive impact on my overall love for this trilogy. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I still like this trilogy, but not as much as I thought I did, and that's okay. Hell, it's okay if you disagree with my opinions or my rankings for this trilogy as well. We all have different opinions, and that's perfectly fine. I guess it's time to go figure out what I'm gonna do next on my channel, huh?